Hello there. A warm welcome to Africa News, bringing you the top stories on the continent. A call to strike largely ignored by Liberian health workers, this despite some calls for danger money to treat Ebola-infected victims. We speak to our correspondent in Monrovia. An unexpected return from exile. Madagascar's ex-president is back on the Indian Ocean island for the first time since he was deposed in a 2009 coup. And as campaigning for Mozambique's presidential elections draws to a close, would-be voters call for key issues such as social inequality and unemployment to be addressed. But first to our top story. Calls for Liberia's health workers to go on strike were today largely ignored, despite some asking for danger money to treat patients infected with the Ebola virus. With 95 Liberian health workers having died so far from the epidemic, some surviving colleagues have requested a salary that reflects the risk of dealing with the virus. Medical staff in West Africa remain on the front line of the worst ever outbreak of Ebola, which has killed over 4,000 people. France 24's Caterina Vitozzi is in the Liberian capital.
It was a great relief for the government here in Liberia that they did do that. It might seem at the moment that these health Ebola clinics are largely staffed by international health workers, but in fact, it's international health workers that are often the doctors and the trainers, but they're really the bulk of the staff are Liberian government healthcare workers. I was at the biggest hospital in Nimba County. Now, this is an area in north of Liberia, and there today I saw staff coming in. They were getting to work, treating both Ebola patients and just patients there with non-Ebola related illnesses. So people coming to work, reports from some of the largest hospitals in Monrovia that some staff did stay away. As you correctly said, they're asking for danger money, something which compensates them for the risk that they're taking dealing with patients with this contagious disease. But the largest call seems to be that they want to see this virus controlled, and then they can talk about salaries afterwards.
Now, Caterina, last week we saw the beginning, if you will, of US troops on the ground in Monrovia. We know that more are expected at a later date. They're there to assist logistically with stemming the spread of the virus. Is there a sense of progress being made?
Absolutely. The first wave of the US troops that were committed to Liberia by the US President Barack Obama, they've essentially been bringing muscle power. They've been bringing the nuts and bolts. They've been building tents. They've been building this Ebola treatment unit. And we are really seeing many more beds being built, both in the capital and across the country. Speaking to the head of the UN Ebola Crisis Management Center, he's saying exactly that. He's saying that there are now currently enough Ebola treatment units in the country. What they're needing now is more properly trained healthcare staff to man them, to treat the patients that take those beds.
Caterina Vitozzi reporting from Monrovia. Well, next, an unexpected return from exile. Madagascar's ex-president today arrived on the Indian Ocean island for the first time since he was deposed in a 2009 coup. Marc Ravalomanana is said to be at an undisclosed location for his own safety. The former leader has attempted several times to return to Madagascar from exile in South Africa, but was previously stopped by Malagasy authorities who feared the move could cause instability. France 24's Nicolas Germain and Gaël Borgia sent us this report.
His supporters had been waiting for him for nearly 6 years. Former President Marc Ravalomanana returned to Madagascar overnight unannounced, but very quickly his supporters spread the word, and a crowd gathered in front of his luxurious villa. Ravalomanana remained vague about his intentions.
I talked to the regional bloc, SADC, and to the African Union. They told me they would do everything to help me return, and now here I am.
But only a few hours later, the former president is arrested. This man witnessed the scene but asked to remain anonymous.
They fired their guns here against the gate. We heard 6 or 7 shots. The Malagasy people wanted peace and tranquility, but they used force. It's not good.
His supporters were furious.
Release our leader. Or do you want us to riot like we did in 2009? If you don't release President Marc Ravalomanana, history will repeat itself. We're ready.
Late on Monday, the government said he was not arrested but placed in a supervised area to ensure his safety.
Vowing to go after Boko Haram until the militant group is totally wiped out, the promise from Cameroon's President Paul Biya this Monday as he met 10 freed Chinese workers who were among 27 hostages held by the Islamist group. The workers were abducted in May, 12 miles from the Nigerian border. Authorities say Biya was personally involved in securing their release. Well, let's take a look at some news in brief now. A bomb has ripped through a policeman's car in the Somali capital. The attack comes a day after suspected Islamist militants shelled an area the president was due to speak at and attacked a cafe. Officials say 2 mechanics were injured in today's car bomb and at least 13 people were killed on Sunday. The South African athlete Oscar Pistorius has reappeared in court in Pretoria. His sentencing hearings begun following the Paralympian's conviction for culpable homicide on September the 12th. Pistorius could face up to 15 years in prison, but could also receive a fine or a suspended sentence. The hearing is expected to last several days. Locations in southern Libya were bombed over the weekend amid ongoing violence between rival militias. Violence occurred in the cities of Kikla and Garian as opposing factions battled for control of the capital, Tripoli. At least 171 people were wounded as a result of shelling. Well, next, police in Mozambique say violence has erupted between the supporters of the ruling Frelimo and opposition Renamo parties. This as campaigning concludes ahead of elections this week. Feuding between the two camps dates back to Mozambique's civil war, which ended in 1992. Ahead of presidential, legislative and provincial elections on Wednesday, an angry electorate has called for key issues such as social inequality and unemployment to be addressed.
Philippe Nyusi, the candidate for Fremilo, the party in power in Mozambique, held his final campaign rally in the capital Maputo Sunday before 5,000 supporters. This former defense minister promised jobs, justice and to fight corruption. The 55-year-old was chosen to take over for the 71-year-old president Armando Guebuza. If he wins, it would mean a generational change in a country which up until now has been led by former soldiers in the war against former colonial power Portugal. Nyusi faces an angry electorate who suffers from social inequality and high unemployment. Voters want the country's new president to step up development.
I want to say that for us, there is hope that they will represent the interests of the people. They have made so many promises.
We don't want war, we want to see the country develop.
Long-running opposition candidate Alfonso da Clama is running for president for the Renamo party for the 4th time. He attracted huge crowds at his campaign rallies. The former guerrilla even took up arms recently against the government for several months, and he raised hopes for transparent elections. Fighting erupted between Frelimo and Renamo supporters in the northern city of Nampula Sunday, where 23 people were injured and 13 arrested. Wednesday's presidential, legislative and provincial election is being closely watched by observers and foreign investors.
And finally, traffic police officers in the Nigerian capital Abuja are using a novel way to direct traffic. Combining official traffic signals, the officers are adding an innovative edge to their job by creating their own dance moves and gestures. The approach is getting quite a positive reaction from drivers who say it shows a fun attitude to work and life.
The most important thing is that he's doing his job with a very good sense of humor. He loves the job he's doing, and that's very important in whatever you do in life. You have to love whatever you're doing first. So from the look of things, you can see that the guy is very happy doing his job.
Right, well, you're up to date with African news. Up next, Mark Owen with more international news.